Hello and welcome you all to the Design Dialogue episode webinar 5, Academics and Architectural Thesis, and much more. Welcoming all the esteemed panelists. I'm going to have a brief introduction of each one of them for our attendees today. So we have with us today Professor Rajeev Mishra, sir, the principal of Sir J.J. College of Architecture, architect Shirish Sukhatme ji, an eminent visiting faculty, architect Anuja Sawant, the principal of Sandeep, Shikre and Associates, and Professor Prasad Shetty, the dean of School of Environment and Architecture. Just a short introduction of each of our esteemed panelists. Rajeev sir is an architect and urban planner. He's also he has a professional work experience of 19 years and currently works on existing projects as the director of Sir J.J. College of Architecture Consultancy Cell. He's also appointed as the chairman for the All India Board for Architecture Education by AICTE and chairperson for NBA for Architecture Education. He's also an elected executive committee member at Council of Architecture. Welcome, Rajeev sir. We now move on to architect Shirish Sukhatme ji. He's an eminent visiting faculty, also the senior most member today on our panel. He's done his Masters of Architecture from IIT Kharagpur and practices under Shirish Sukhatme and Associates for over 20 years and has designed over 150 buildings. He's a visiting faculty for the last 22 years and is popularly known as the professor of basic design. He's also been appointed as the Chief Examiner of Architectural Design for the last 10 years by the Mumbai University. Moving on to Professor Prasad Shetty, sir. He's the Dean of School of Environment and Architecture. He's an urbanist and has studied urban management from Rotterdam. He's also one of the founding members of the Urban Research Collective and the Society for Environment and Architecture. He has worked as a lecturer at Kamla Raheja College in Mumbai and has been a consulting urban management expert for town planning for Dadra and Nagar Haveli and as well as Mendefera in Eritrea. He's currently the Dean of, as mentioned, School of Environment and Architecture. Welcome, Prasad, sir. It's an honor. And finally, we have Anuja ma'am. She is the principal at Sandeep Shikre and Associates and has been practicing for over 25 years and has expertise in master planning and facade strategies and has a lot of residential and commercial projects to her name. And I have marked that part out in bold that she believes that if you do it right, it lasts forever. So welcome, Anuja ma'am. It's an absolute honor to have all of you here today, and much more than you all being the professors and eminent architects that you all are. A big reason is because I am going to be able to have a one-on-one conversation with all of you because I know you all personally. Prasad sir has been my thesis guide 6 years ago, and he's known me since then. And Rajeev sir is obviously, he's been extremely close to that. And I worked under Anuja ma'am during my internship. So that's how she knows me. So, and Shirish sir has known me since I was a child. So I think they're all from various phases of my life, and snippets of their expertise in the profession is what we're looking at today. So welcome all of you. I'd request all of you to keep your mics on for the session today. Thank you. So can all of you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, perfect. All right. So we have a lot of, so obviously there's so much talk about what's happening in the architectural fraternity and, so much of dynamism and volatility in the market and, fluctuating real estate, etc. A very big part of it is our questions that are coming to young students who are in 4th year, 5th year of architecture, that what is it really in for them, right? But before we really go into the future, let's go into the past and the present. My first question is going to be to Shirish sir, the senior most in our panel today. Um, so as we're aware that, in terms of the duration, architecture as a course is one of the longest courses. And, we still sort of struggle to, have whether we are going to have the right knowledge, etc., in the 5 years. So is it in any way that you can justify why is architecture for 5 years and most of the other professions for 4 years in terms of the degree course?
Yeah. Karan, can I answer?
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah. This is a very pleasing experience that to whom I saw in half pant. Now he's asking me the questions, right? Anyway, this is the this is the way in which new generation is shaping up. 100% in my time, 71 I passed out S.E.A, and that time after 11th I got into architecture, and I saved my 1 year. So for me it was only 4 years course, right? But still now it's 5 years after 12th. So after 12th it's 5 years. When our course was 5 years, in IIT the engineering and architecture course also was 5 years in those days. Right. Now all technological courses, they have compressed to 4 years. Okay. For whatever reasons. They have optionals, they have their main topics, they have their junior and subordinate topics, and they can keep on selecting their topics and they can focus on one side, right?
Yeah.
In our course, it's 5 years, and at 5 years, why? Nobody knows this. I'm teaching, it's 5 years because nobody wants to change this. Right from first year, architectural design, the way in which it is taught. Second year, the way in which it is taught. Third year, fourth year, final year, again same. Faculty sits around in the staff room. They draft the problem. Problems are given to the student. Second year, they give clubhouse. Third year, they give shopping mall. Fourth year, they give housing society. And in dissertation, it is left to them. Now, in design, when there are so many credits given to the design, right now there is no research done in design. Right. I'm fortunately I am on Senate of S.E.A, Rajeev sir, and I've attended one meeting. There is a lot of research going on designing, how actual process of designing should happen. And if that process of designing is going to same verbatim, same for 5 years, then why it should not be 8 years? Why it should not be 10 years? You give them Council of Architecture license at 5 years and let them learn. There are so many topics, so many subjects, I think, they are totally redundant. Actually, how you should decide the duration of the course? See, it's something you impart the knowledge, right? Knowledge is, to my mind, which my head of the department, IIT Kharagpur, told me, there are 3 types of knowledge. One is conceptual, one is factual, and third is procedural knowledge. Correct. These knowledges should be given to the student. Most of the procedural knowledge, one is supposed to get after he passes out. Right. These are the principles of pedagogy. There are 7 types of intelligences. You must know architecture requires spatial intelligence more. Architecture requires imaginative intelligence more. There are 2 types of right side of the brain and left side of the brain. Where imagination requires right side of the brain, but left requires quantities, structures, logical thinking, physical awareness, services. All that, everything is required. So, to my mind, it is required to be compressed to 4 years.
I'm going to go to Rajeev sir on your opinion of what Shirish sir has been talking about. Like, if he's talking about redundancy, or he's talking about certain reforms that need to come in the educational system, I'll give you a small example. My father passed out in 82, and in the first year he was taught brick and mortar joints. I passed out in 2014, and I was taught brick and mortar joints in the first year. How is architectural education really evolving? And if it is, are we really seeing the changes? So you'll need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Karan. I would clarify. Thank you, Sukhatme sir. I would like you all to know that when it all started, when all professional courses were to be designed, it was decided that they would, after graduation, give comprehensive services and can start practicing as a professional. Okay. In India, we did not have a situation where you had to give an exam to get a license to practice. And therefore, it was left to the universities and the education system, where while you are studying, you are given the knowledge up to a level where you can at least know where you stand and how you can take it ahead. So, as per the directions of the Union of International Architects, okay, the course has to be for 5 years. Any course in architecture which is less than 5 years is not recognized as a recognized architecture course. This is the universal law. Second thing is the other professions like medicine is also 5 years. The other good course in law of 5 years in all national law universities after 12 is also for 5 years, because there is a professional council that makes all these registered professionals earn and learn maximum facets of the subject while they are in college. This is the first background that I wanted to start with.
Right.
Second thing is that, besides design gradation, as Professor Sukhatme rightly explained, where we start with basic design, then we bring in interior design, then we get specialization of architecture design in third year, then we put in urban design in fourth year, and finally we end up with design dissertation. That is the scale at which we go, besides design projects. You have to understand that in architecture, you basically learn a bit of sociology, because you have to understand what is the needs of the people through humanities. You learn a bit of geography, because you have to understand the difference between a useless land and agriculture land and the valuation of land. Okay, so you have to understand geographical aspects so that you understand survey leveling, because it's part of geography. The third thing is economics. There's something that we have to understand with respect to land values. We have to understand the cost of building construction in a small way, not in a detailed way. So you have to go through quantity surveying. You have to understand a bit of estimation and costing. And because you are able to design, you should be also able to construct. So building construction goes along with the subject. Now, your question where you learned the basics the same way your dad learned, you learned the doors and windows the way your dad learned. So I guess any institution is there to give you fundamental knowledge. It should actually give you more than that after giving you all these exercises, but it is not able to do it because you're taught many subjects in any college of architecture. And therefore, it is not possible for all these subjects to be taken to the level of expertise. Structural engineering is also a course that is taught, because unless you know bending moment diagrams, unless you know shear force diagrams, all that you dream will not be able to see the light of the day.
Right.
And working drawing, I think working drawing is a subject which I feel is the marriage of architecture design, building construction, and structural design, where you actually build a building on the paper. Now, with this understanding, it is only that when you go for an internship in an architect's office, you try to see how these things that they have learned is actually working in an office. So when I was a student, I used to basically after college, maybe after 233, would go to an architect's office as an intern, because we wanted to learn. And we had many architects who took us willingly, because, okay, besides doing academics, you also want to learn. So 5 years came into this position of giving education because, one, because it was required by the professional council, Union of International Architects, to make it up for 5 years, like Bar Council of India, like Medical Council of India, it had to be for 5 years. So we just followed that. And second thing was that while you studied, you also worked with a practicing architect so that you could perform better in your college. That was the whole intention. And it also gave a direction of earn and learn scheme. So I feel 5 years at the moment is good enough. And I think we should not reduce, sir, because it is the only place where architecture student enjoys dreaming, he enjoys thinking and design thinking. You know, generation of ideas is what he is going through. And therefore, we should give him that time in his life. Later
Uh,
on, he has to face it all. Yeah. So
so,
this is my side of the story.
So, Shirish, sir, before I go to you, since Rajeev sir was mentioning about you should work with architects, etc., I'm going to go to Anuja ma'am. Anuja ma'am, you have been practicing for over 25 years now. You have also had a lot of interns who come from various colleges for internship at Sandeep Shikre Associates. So, what do you see them to be actually equipped that you can trust them with work? Do you see them equipped enough to be molded? What is your take on it? I mean, after the 4.5 years that they have, 4 years that they have spent, then they are coming for the internship. So you obviously have certain expectations that they should know. What is your experience? Are they actually experienced?
See, Karan, when they come to office, first of all, 5 years, see, it changes from student to student. First of all, it changes from institute to institute also. So many institute, new upcoming institute have a little bit of different approach towards the education. And that's where I see a good amount of change happening in the student. Few students are really bright student and they have a good amount of exposure. How Rajeev said that they start working, they start analyzing, they are using tool. So they come bit of prepared in today's scenario. But overall, when any trainee architect approaches me, frankly, after 25 years, I really feel that I don't expect anything from them, first of all. So we have certain criteria what we have developed over the period where any candidate comes to me. First of all, we will take them through to understand how their creativity is, how their CAD standards are, and overall how that particular candidate has an aptitude towards learning new things and new skills. So rather than me looking at the ready-made 2 minutes Maggi noodles, it's very difficult to carve out such students right now in the current education scenario. But I really feel that you have to, and see, individual architectural practice is different. Individual offices are also functioning in a various different way. So definitely you need to mold them into your practice. Education, what they are earning right now, the Flemish bond and those queen post and king post trusses are not used. I mean, whatever discussion, I really felt that in education, that reset button or refresh button is very much required, where the newer technologies needs to be taught to them, newer construction exposure they should get. So slowly and steadily, they are getting prepared in that direction. But right now, if you ask me, a few students are really brilliant, so they come up with their own knowledge level. But most of them, I would say up to 70% of a student, they come up with their set of faculty knowledge, based knowledge, because there is a lack of professional knowledge in the current institute, though they are professional colleges. So they come with some sort of defined terms in their mind, and then you have to work around with them. So we equally become a teacher to them. We are like a faculty to them, and we have to nurture them and we have to grow them. That's what happens to us.
Thank you, ma'am. That's a very good insight. I'm actually you mentioned about new institutes or sort of a refresh button, etc. So I'm going to go to Prasad sir. Prasad sir, you are the dean of one of the youngest colleges today in Mumbai. So how have you? How has School of Environment and Architecture sort of changed or challenged, if I may say, the current way of mode of education and way of education? If you could please.
I want to kind of start with responding to your earlier questions so as to build up my case. I want to approach it from three coordinates actually. What does an architect do? And I think it's a misconception that architects make buildings. Architects do not make buildings. The buildings are made by masons, carpenters, contractors, engineers, and everybody else. what does an architect do? We are not botanists, okay? We do not kind of, our material is not plants and animals. And, we are not physicists. We are not, we are not chemists. We are architects. Our material is space and form. And I think what the architect does is to imagine new spaces and form. So that's primary. One has to understand that. That's a key thing. And to imagine it, they use drawings, they use models, and they use many other things. So the architects really is in the business of imagining space and form. And so it's a creative field, and it is like imagining new music or new dance performances, new theater, and all of this requires time. Music education goes on for life. Rajeev has kind of set up an institutional framework as how universally it is dealt with. But I would think if you were to train yourself in thinking about new space and form, then it's a much longer kind of a experience and training process. And I don't think it is 4 years, 5 years business. I mean, institutionally, yes, 4 years, 5 years. And the question really is not, whether it is 4 years or 5 years. The question is what is to be taught really, because we still keep teaching what the British taught us. And the British taught us to kind of do two things. One is they taught us some styles, and second is they taught us how to make drawings orthographically. We made buildings before the British. Orthography comes in only in the 1880s. Before the British, we made very complicated forts and palaces without those drawings. We followed another procedure altogether. Okay, so I think what is to be taught is really the question. So that is my first coordinate. The second coordinate is the idea of the professional life. I think there is a limited understanding of professional life of an architect is to serve the building industry. Well, that is one thing that the architect does, to serve the building making industry. There are many other practices within the discipline of architecture. There is the artisanal practices where really architects go on into the experiments and of thinking about space and making space and stuff like that. And space is in its multiple dimensions. What is space is something is a separate discussion. There are academic practices where architects are engaged in thinking about the relationship of space with life, really, of behavior with life. And then this is something which is a key component to be taught and to be learned, really. So I think there are multiple kinds of professions that one can think about beyond beyond the building industry, and architects are kind of engaged in the design of life, really, and not really design of buildings. So because I think that should be clear. And the third thing I think, and the third coordinate I would say is a very pragmatic coordinate, which is basically looking at in the last 10 years between 2011 and 2018 really, number of architecture colleges have increased threefold. So we were 171, today we are 507. 10,000 architects were being produced in 2011. In the matter of 8 years, there are 30,000 architects being produced. Where will they go and what will they do really? And particularly when the Supreme Court has kind of said that you do not require, architectural, it has kind of blurred the boundaries of what the architect can do and stuff like that. I think the idea of designing life is more interesting, where architects gets into many more aspects of design really. And I think one should broaden herself to kind of think about what are the various aspects of design education. And an undergraduate degree is really a base from where you can launch yourself into multiple things. And lastly, what can be taught in profession can only be taught in practice. I cannot teach in the school how to get your first project. I cannot teach in the school how do you get approvals. I cannot teach many things which can be taught in the office and in the building making process. I cannot teach because that is not what I specialize in. But I can teach you how to imagine and think of new space and form.
That's an amazing insight again. I think I'm going to lead to what he was saying, what Sir mentioned about, broadening horizons, and, it's more about trying to evolve on what needs to be taught. Then if we broaden the horizon in terms of design, Shirish, I'm going to come to you. Then why not broaden the way the design is assessed as well? I mean, why do we still have the same format of making a site plan, a section, make a 3D model, have a submission list, and then take everything on the submission list and then get it? If you give that, you will pass. If you don't give that, you will not. We are in an evolutionary world. There are so many other forms of representation, whether it's 3D spaces or however. So do you feel that the marking system, the grading system itself needs to evolve as well?
Is the question to me?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah. First, let me just discuss the aspect which Rajeev said, that the course has to be 5 years. There were times when we used to travel to T squares with local and with set squares, and we used to take, Mulik sir used to teach us drawing, and it used to take a long time to do the things. So things have changed now. The drawing which used to take hours together can be done in much less time. Even in architectural offices, you see, large drawing board, elephant-sized boards have reduced down to laptops. So when these technologies are adopted, before mobile, after mobile, life is different, right? Before AutoCAD and after AutoCAD, life is different. So when these vacuums are created, these vacuums generally needs the compression. If just because there is some statute, and that is why it should be inflated to 5 years, somewhere somebody should question this issue. That is what I feel, because students get enough time to do tours, and then they do dahi handis, and then do, and everywhere we try and seek everything teaches. Everything teaches, of course, going from Virar to Churchgate by hanging on the side also teaches. Everything teaches. So are we teaching that? That is the question. Second aspect about the presentation you are talking of. Karan,
the marking system, sir. Not necessarily presentation, but marking system.
The marking system and presentation, both related. Like when you are talking of number of drawings to be done, let me tell you, all these aspects which Shetty sir has said, those are all there. But ultimately, when your drawing has to be implemented on site, it has to go translated through drawings only. With today's scenario, let us not talk of something else. For example, if I am going to get a client, he is going to ask me the drawings, right? So how the drawing is the only way in which it should go. So all floor plans are must, all sections are must, elevations are must, location of columns are must, and three-dimensional thing may be required for client. Contractor is least interested in your three-dimensional view, and whatever he says, whatever RCC consultant is giving, that is what I am constructing. And ultimately, these are all tangible things which make the entire architectural profession implementable. Even though we say architecture is not construction buildings, but other than constructing buildings, architect is not paid. Today's situation, I'll tell you, 30% of the college are not getting students. The colleges are getting closed down just because, Rajeev sir, you know, from 50%, they made the bar 50% of 12. The entire thing has come down. See the caliber of students we are getting in now. In my times, architecture was the first choice. Now architecture is the last choice. You see JEE advanced exam or whatever, the students who are getting 17,000 rank and 21,000, like those people are going to architecture. Because the courses which are selected and parents which you are going to put the point that is going to, recruitment is going to be the deciding factor. And if architect will not make himself knowledgeable, architect will think, I am going to just make a sketches about its spaces I do not know, about its spans I do not know. I don't want to talk about structure engineer do, air condition wala will air condition, acoustics. Then what you are doing other than doing sketches? And until I don't want to have any justifying philosophy to call this as an architecture. Yes.
So you mentioned that, you know, there has to be like, there are these set of drawings that a client would expect, etc. Right? So Rajeev sir, my next question is to you. If there are, you know, there's a way in which drawings are expected from an architect once he graduates. So obviously those drawings are expected to be, they are not expected to be hand done. then why is this utmost urge there in college, where first year and second year, I think specifically, students are not allowed to use AutoCAD or other softwares to sort of express their mode of design? So we cannot hear you.
Am I audible now? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. See, I would like to add to what Sukhatme sir said is this: yes, architecture is reinventing itself every time over a period of time, and we keep on learning, basically also from the students and the technologies that are rapidly changing. But when it comes to discipline in architecture, when it comes to being able to implement the ideas that you have thought in your mind to be executed on site, the minimum requirement is drawings. Secondly, drawings are used to explain your design ideas well. So there has to be some medium of communication, and this medium of communication is drawing. There are students I know who cannot draw a section even when they are in third year and fourth year. So it is very important that while they are in first year and second year, they do not use AutoCAD and Revit to draw sections, because I want him to understand what is a section of a building. He has to go through the process of learning the section drawing of a building. He has to know how a footing has to be designed in terms of a building underground. He has to understand the language of communication of the drawing to a contractor on site or to an engineer who's actually going to do the structural calculations. Plus, there is another thing. We want a level playing field for all students, because what happens is when a teacher is evaluating design and creation of spaces, which they actually present through their pin-ups and other modes of presentation, we want everybody to be having same ground level. Okay, everybody has to present it at the same level. And this is something that you need to understand, that if you can draw well, if you can sketch well, you will be able to do better AutoCAD drawings. You will be able to do better Revit drawings. But when you are dealing with a client, you remember one thing, that if you have a pencil and a sketchbook in your hand, and when you talk to the client while sketching, explaining him the design, he will respond to you better. You can understand him better. So you take any practicing architect who is able to convince your client or his client, it is because he is able to draw what he is thinking and he is able to convey. And all clients understand things better when drawing as a medium of communication is used. So it is not that we are wasting students' time. We are making him better. You can think better when you draw. And this is something which is good for every student who thinks that he is being made to draw. Actually, he should love drawing. And architects are people who understand what others only know about. Architects are people who love finding solutions to a problem, and they give architectural solutions and they enjoy doing it. So if they do something which they do not like, they should feel good to do it again. Because as Prasad said, we are here in the business of designing spaces and forms. It is the leap of our imagination that clicks and sticks. And this is how you convey through the medium of drawings. So there is no one in architecture school who says that I will explain the section without doing a drawing. I think drawing is the basic discipline, and he has to understand it. And he has to know that if he wants to become an architect, he has to go through it. There's a last point I want to tell you, that, recently I have also come through a phenomenon where a lot of students who want to become an architect, and there are a lot of students who want to do a course in architecture for 5 years. They don't want to become architects. So we have this problem that is happening in some of the architecture schools. They just want to use architecture degree as a stepping stone to do something else. And this is what is the problem, seriously, which I wanted to tell you. So we are here to see that if you are a architecture student and if you are learning drawings, you are able to think better, you are able to design better, and you are able to create better, which is what is the requirement. Yeah. So the submission, you said, you have to take drawings, submit. The idea is that you have to be punctual, you have to be committed, and you have to follow deadlines, because this is what the profession is going to lead to. I agree with Prasad. Architecture is more than designing buildings. architecture is also thinking creatively, conveying ideas in a brilliant way. Architect is also letting the client know what is good for him, but then ultimately he has to deliver through a building or any design product, which is absolutely
So,
fine.
Karan, I just want to come in here for a minute.
Yes, Anuja.
Actually, I'm going to ask you one question. So you've been the part of the generation where partially you have done drafting on board, and then
Yeah.
partial level you started with the AutoCAD. What were your difficulties? Because I am from the generation where throughout I've done my drafting on the drafting board. But as a student, because see, when they come to actual offices, what I find is your question is pretty right that they are not either good at drafting or not good at AutoCAD. So I find that disconnect, they come up with certain amount of halfway through both the things.
Right.
As a student where you did both the combination, what was your experiences?
So I'm going to actually
Yeah.
go. I mean, this ये तो मतलब table turn हो गया. But anyway, I'm just going to say this in one statement that. So actually, Prasad sir was my thesis guide, and I still remember that my first way of me explaining my design to him was through sketches only. Was the whole research that was done, everything that was done was through sketches. And I have to say one thing, what I did personally was because at that time Revit वगैरह obviously कुछ ज़्यादा नहीं था. I learned it, but I did not use it as a medium to express my design for the first 2 years, like what Rajeev sir is saying. And very rightly, if you are good at sketching, that does not mean that you should not be good at softwares. It's not either or, it is both. And I think that was actually, I was supposed to ask this question because it's something which a lot of people keep asking. Yes.
So
No, but I think,
sorry Rajiv, in short,
yeah.
I feel that once you start drafting or once you start sketching, your thinking towards your design can happen through your sketching.
Correct.
Many people are comfortable in thinking in AutoCAD, but to get that right kind of a flair, to start from the sketching or to start with the physical drafting,
Right.
will evolve you in a very different way. But then later on when the AutoCAD comes, I find the students are a bit confused that, oh, without sketching, I cannot think or I cannot design on AutoCAD. So that's where when they come to the practice, I always see that kind of a struggle happening in them. So that I just want to convey to Rajeev and Prasad that yes, I see that kind of a dilemma happening with those students, that they are a bit confused. So how to overcome? Right now, I don't have any solution for that, but this kind of a confusion they are into, that I cannot think on the AutoCAD. I have to start sketching. Few of them, they have this kind of a struggle.
Yeah. Yes, Prasad sir, you would want to add something.
I want to kind of look at it a little bit. The question of drawing, I want to look at it a little bit wider, and I want to kind of say that what we learn is not drawing, but what we learn is orthographic projections. Okay,
right.
And orthographic projections, whether we draw it by hand or by computer, it's the same thing actually.
Right.
And this orthographic projections have a certain history. They're just 150 years old. In India, first time they were made in 1880s. Before that, we did not have orthographic projections. And we were taught to make orthographic projections, and that's what we've been learning, that our idea is that architecture is making drawings, because that's what the British taught us, because they required people who made drawings and who could supervise construction,
Right.
And that's what they taught us, construction and drawing in a specific way. Historically, drawings have not been orthographic before this, and even today, with the whole range of computational architecture and parametrics, and Karan, you know best, you have entered into another realm of drawing which are more about mathematics and geometry and trigonometry and calculus, and drawings are of a different kind altogether. Before that, before orthography, we had drawings as as poems, as codes which are written, and they're elaborate ways. There are two aspects to it. One is orthographic drawings is a very specific way of drawing, and it is kind of consolidated for the market, but the market has been changing, and it is better that we kind of get acquainted with the idea that the market is changing, and be agile to kind of think about new ways of drawing this.
Right.
But more important is something else, and this is the point that I want to make. See, what does orthographic drawing do to your head actually? What does it do to your imagination? Orthography compresses the idea of space into a measurable entity. All right, it is something which can be measured, which is an emptiness that is kind of put together through plan and section. The idea of measurable entity brings out two things. One is it kind of gets a determinism, which basically yields itself into standards and stuff like that. Right. The bedroom has to be of a certain way, and the hospital has to be a certain way. The staircase has to be of a certain dimensions and stuff like that. It kind of brings about this idea of standards. It kind of consolidates. But more importantly, it kind of limits the idea of architecture into a physicality. Now, somebody mentioned client all the way. I do not know who the client is, because for me, in my ethics course in architecture, I teach that the client is not the one who's paying for the building, but the client is the one who's using it, one who gets affected, one who gets the whole range. The client is my environment, the client is my culture, and many, many, many other things. The one who makes building for herself or for her profits, which is our responsibility. But I think as architects, we are custodians of also culture and environment. And I think that is the ethical stand that I would like to take, and I teach in my school. The architectural ethics beyond the logistics of profession. Logistics of profession cannot kind of hold the ethical dimension of architecture, and I think this is something which is very important to understand, and that is connected to the way we think about architecture and the way we draw through orthography. So I think orthography has its limitation, and I think it is better that we kind of start interrogating it seriously and thinking beyond it, and not kind of waste our time thinking whether we can do it right or no. Of course, I think all students kind of get orthography and AutoCAD very quickly, and if they don't get them, they're really dumb. You need to kind of, it's a very easy thing to get actually, but what is more important is that the idea of drawing is implicit in the way we think of space and the way we imagine. And I think we need to open that up in a variety of ways, because only then we can think new.
So, but I'm actually going to go back to your previous point, Prasad sir, that you mentioned that, in design colleges, you all are taught to, explore, design, etc., etc. And you said that it's not really in the scope of the education system to actually teach a student to get their first job, or to probably like understand how to market themselves, etc. But then once they're done with architecture, in various forms of architecture, they end up needing that, right? Like, then why can education systems not incorporate those aspects of professional learning as well?
See, there is an ecosystem through which you kind of learn things, right? Like I don't know how to teach somebody how do you get your first project. I don't know whether any architect will reveal with honesty how does one get the first project. It is got through, and it doesn't mean that you are an exceptional designer and you will get your first project quickly. To get your projects, you need many more things. You need networks, you need all kinds of connections and fields of variety of nature, and I think that can be taught by the profession itself much better. I think after one graduates, and if one wants to kind of get into the building making industry, then there has to be a gestation period where she learns this whole dimension of profession, of how do you kind of engage, how do you negotiate, how do you network, how do you kind of and these are the things which can happen in the ecosystem of the profession better than the ecosystem of academia, because academia cannot hold that because academia has a different kind of orientation, and I think it is necessary that academia kind of hold an ideological orientation which is of a different kind.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to go to Rajeev sir. Rajeev sir, there is So as per what Prasad sir was saying about, the whole difference between academic and sort of professional life, if really professional aspects of learning are necessary for them to foray in whichever fields they want, which is why the whole aspect of internship comes in to the picture of the curriculum. So do you feel that, sir, a 3 or 4 month internship is really enough to sort of get a, I personally just feel, we get interns in our office, and I personally feel that a lot of times it's often just for that professional practice jury that the portfolio is made. And I think Anuja ma'am will second me on that, that learning is extremely important in the professional phase as well. So do you, I'm sorry, I'm again going to the duration part of it, but unfortunately, what are your opinions on when should internship be done and how long should it be?
Yeah, see, I would begin by saying that teachers or the academia, as Prasad put it very well, are basically trying to inculcate in the students while they are learning in architecture school that after having yourself graduated, you will become part of the profession. First work with practicing architects, and then ultimately you might do your own practice. But we are here to basically help you generate a lot of ideas and choose your specific field of liking in which you would like to specialize. This is what we generally try to make a student realize and make him sensitive towards the profession. Now, we are also, as a school responsible, or school of architecture, we feel that we are here to bridge the gap between academics and profession. We are here to use practice or internship as a bridge where we are actually telling a practicing architect, here we have a student who has learned the following things while he is in the college. He has to be given sufficient exposure as to what happens in practice so that he becomes a little mature in understanding how things are actually done. So it was all right now that you have been able to think what is it that you wanted to do in terms of your design drawing or in terms of your design ideas. But now that you have to actually implement it, this is the way it is actually being done. This is the code of practice. These are the building bylaws that are being followed. And this is how the profession is being practiced. Now, whether the candidate is going to be examined is basically an output of an academic requirement. The academic requirement wants to see what understanding he has gained while he was working with an architect when he was in the office. And our practicing architects are also equally dedicated teachers in a way where they actually expose them to certain things which is not possible for a candidate to be exposed while he or she is in the college. And it is there, when the candidate, while learning in a college, goes to an office which is in practice, that they pick up the ideas and choose a path. So it is all walking on a path, trying to find out directions and then choosing a destination. But not in any way trying to stop a mind of a candidate that you have to do this, you have to do that. These are the things available. These are the officers practicing. These are your friends going to various offices. Interact with them, find out what is going around so that you become so capable that you are able to take your own decision. And what is it that you want to do after completing architecture course? So we basically help them analyze, give them freedom to think. And then when they come back to School of Architecture and do a design dissertation project, they are full of ideas, they are full of knowledge, they are full of experience, and they want to make it so big. They get lean, mean, and hungry. They said, I have been to a professional practice office while training, and I know what's going on, and therefore I am now abreast with the latest technology. I'm going to use virtual 3D in my presentation. I'm going to do a presentation which I will then show the world that this is the way things have to be done. It is basically inspiring him to think wild and take anything that he wants. That is the idea of a school. Generate ideas as much as you can so that you can think beyond and have the freedom to take decisions. Yeah.
So, but then in that case, so essentially out of snippets of what you and Prasad sir are saying, so a big part of all this is patience, right? So every learning comes at the right time. So we should not expect, a school to teach you what the professional aspects of learning are going to teach you, an internship can teach you.
A
So it's
school is a
essential.
place. A school is a place where, like you, many people have come together to do architecture, learn from each other. Believe me, it is teacher also learning from students. It is also students learning from teachers. But I would like you to say here that architecture teachers are permanent students in architecture colleges. They keep on learning. And these students who keep on coming for the next 5 years, they end up teaching a lot of things to the architecture college teachers.
Okay,
So
so
the learning is two-way. Yeah.
right. So
Learning
since
is
now
two-way.
you mentioned about teachers, so I'm going to go to that point wherein, so as a faculty, a lot of times, as a principal, I think you must have faced this issue where students come and tell you that I'm not able to relate to this particular faculty, or I'm not able to, learn what is being taught. There was a very nice thing that Adarkar sir once told me, that Arvind Adarkar sir, he had told me that, sometimes what happens is, if someone knows 80 out of 100 and is able to deliver 79, but if someone knows 69 of the project out of 100 and is able to deliver the whole 69, that's still more important. And I feel, what exactly is the what exactly are the qualities that you look at before hiring teachers as professionals in your, because they, I feel, are the biggest molders. And often there are a lot of complaints, like whether it's I'm going to talk about subjects wherein, like, whether it's quantity surveying, or whether it's services, etc. We have noticed that there are gaps, sometimes, in what is taught and what is actually absorbed by the student. So what are the qualities that you look at for hiring teachers?
See, you're talking to me. You want me to answer
Yes, sir,
this?
Rajeev, sir. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. See, Karan, I am not so privileged and lucky today to be able to be in a position to hire the teachers that I wish to take for my college. At the moment, there is a Council of Architecture norms on the basis of which the interviews are taken by the University of Bombay for Sir J.J. College of Architecture. So there is a selection committee irrespective of me. The principal of J.J. College of Architecture is not invited to select teachers at J.J. College of Architecture. Is the first thing I would like to do. Second thing is, what is it that we want a teacher who is coming to teach to have? Okay, this is what I can tell you. A teacher who wishes to teach and wants to teach architecture should be exposed to certain practices before coming to teach. So I would be very happy if, besides visiting faculty who are practicing architects coming to teach, the core faculty should have minimum knowledge of practice. They should be postgraduates because they would understand the method of researching, the method of basically applying academic knowledge to the practice of the profession. The third thing I would look for a teacher is to be able to deliver and communicate architecture education. Architecture is a profession, teaching is a profession, teaching architecture is the third profession. Teaching architecture is not as simple as practicing architecture. So, and it is, of course, difficult to get a good teacher in architecture is a standard nomination, I would say. But getting good teacher and being able to teach well are the two things that I would actually dream for. And I feel that as an architect who has a knowledge of practice, as an architect who has taught for at least few years, as an architect who has done post-graduation or specialization in a certain subject, and is exposed to the current practices in the city where he's teaching, will be able to think better, will be able to communicate better,
Yeah.
and will be able to answer questions of the students who are asking him what's going around in the city better.
Right.
So as long as you are participating in the local environment for local development, you are able to communicate better and deliver it better. So I
So,
would always look for such people to join architecture. But I would like you to know that good architects, good practicing architects, shy away from coming to teach. There are very few architects who give time because we want time of good architects. What we are looking for is our alumni. We are looking for good practicing architects to give this idea. How do they think? How do they imagine? How do they convert their forms and spaces into a structure that is actually going to describe their design idea? It is basically how to communicate using architecture expression and then calling themselves as an architect for a project. I think this is what is exciting for a student of architecture while he or she is learning architecture. There is also an attempt that I have been trying to do is reading. I have been telling students, you should adopt one book, read it, and tell me what have you understood from that book. Reading is something which I find so difficult in students because they are not able to concentrate. Reading is something that I wish to inculcate as a habit because it is good for your brain as far as thinking is concerned. So design thinking, books related to design thinking, book related to development of technology in architecture are some of the views that I basically intend to do. And this is what is good for even young teachers. So the willingness to teach is also finding out all these things that I have just told in the current situation, in the current city where you are practicing and teaching architecture.
I'm going to go to Shirish, sir. So you've been on both sides of the table, right? You've also, obviously, I mean, in terms of you've taught and you've also, you are a practicing architect with a full-fledged firm. So what is, what is your take? I mean, do you really see young students in architecture actually being able to absorb things that are taught to them? And are they taught in, I don't really know if there's a way of teaching, but are they really taught? What are your observations basically?
I have taught first year. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I've taught first year for a long time, right? And faculty used to always ask me, my senior class ka teachers means who are also my students many times, but they used to ask me ki ye batch kashi hai, he batch, how is this batch? So I used to tell them ki, to my mind, all batches are same. There is nothing like good batch or bad batch. It's how you teach the subject and how you arouse their interest in the subject. Fortunately or unfortunately, the subject which was given to me after I came from IIT Kharagpur, he said that there is a whole lot of subjectivity in subject of basic design. Why don't you take it? Why don't you make it little more? People should understand. There was a strike in JJ. The student said, don't want to sit in the class. What they are saying about basic design, we don't understand. Something which is, some model which is falling on the, after the studio in Kachra, they say this is very good. And something we have done fantastic work. They say, what is this? This you have copied it. See, this kind of discord was happening there. I was 23 years old when I came from Kharagpur and started teaching this. And I was given a very senior faculty like Ghatne, who used to teach. In those days, he used to teach Vastu Shastra and history of architecture and other subjects he used to teach. He used to see Kundali also, Rajeev. He was a very senior person. So it was like very senior person who was to retire after 2 years, and I have just joined.
Okay.
The thing I'll tell you, in this case, talking about anything, like talking about architecture, is much easier. I can keep on having lectures and poems and what is space and space is poem and poem is space, but question comes, how you have to make it stand. Your poem should get a tangible form. Talking about something cannot teach anything. You have to show them doing it. If some sort of work is there, I used to, for them, clay model. I used to do the clay model in front of them. I used to do the entire, texture chart. I used to do it in front of them. Thermocol modeling now, which is banned, we used to do, and students they learn while they see a teacher doing it. Now, for example, I am 100% sure there are 10 teachers, Rajeev, those are teaching design.
Right.
What they expect from students, and if they are asked to do that design of hospital design, or if they are asked to do that design on their own, how far they are capable of doing it. You can't keep on talking about hospital. You can't keep on talking about, for example, when client comes to me, I can't tell my client ki tum black market ka paisa mat karo. I can't tell them ki Arey, you are having these. I can't tell them. I can't inculcate morality in him. He has come to me to have his plot. He has to design. I'm not going to. I'm going to give him the drawings or whatever by which his building can be constructed. This architect's definition is settled now. After 40 years of my practice and 40 years of design, doing the teaching, I know what architecture and what society expects from you. It's no point in telling society, okay, you are considering me as architect, we are very different. We are not the architects which you think. Then they will go to those architects which they think as an architect, right? So this is, and ultimately you have to get patronized. You, until unless your ideas, you are not going to construct your own houses and you are not going to construct your own poems, right? So the thing is how you teach, and as Raju very rightly pointed out,
right?
I have seen so many private colleges, one person teaching all subjects. He's teaching design, he's teaching town planning, he's teaching landscape designing, everything he is teaching. Everywhere he is teaching it because he is not getting faculty to teach. I think it's a high time when so many private colleges are mushrooming like everywhere. There needs to be auditing whether they have people to teach acoustics, whether they have people to teach bylaws, whether they have people to teach town planning, working drawings, bylaws, your national building codes, because this is going to form a tangible part of your architecture. And most of the private colleges, they don't have such faculties. Yeah.
Prasad sir, what Shirish sir was mentioning, like, in terms of the precision, like what all tools you require to design, etc., etc. Now, there's one part of it which we obviously all know, structures. But structures is taught in the same, there are two aspects to it, building construction, and then there is this extremely dreaded subject for everyone, which is TOS, okay, theory of structures. Now, what is your take, sir? Like, why is it important for me to know the mathematics behind a bending moment of a beam to actually design a building? I just need to know the structural system, and I need to understand how is the structure erected. But I don't need to understand how many reinforcements are going to be required, because we always have structural designs for that. Then do you think, sir, with evolution, that subject itself, I'm going to talk about that specific subject is because of the, the gravitas of that subject, which it impacts a lot of years, because I've seen a lot of people faltering just because they're not from that science background, etc. Because now I think they are accepting from commerce and arts as well. So why is it required? And can that subject also not evolve, sir? What is your take on it, sir?
I think you need to look at it again historically. I kind of keep on coming back to it because I think you need to look at it very historically. Again, I'm telling you, the British set it up for us in a specific way, and because they wanted us to be good draftspeople as well as somebody who can supervise construction. Okay, and somebody who can supervise construction required to know a specific construction technique and structural knowledge. Okay, so therefore we do not have literature, we do not have ethnography, we do not have biology, we do not have fundamental sciences, we do not have quantum physics, because all of these are also impactful about how does one go about thinking of space.
Right.
I need ethnographic studies. I need sociology and economics far more to understand how do people behave. I need behavioral sciences. This is the fundamental thing. I do not know the configuration of space which affects the behavior of people. And these are behavioral sciences which are absolutely necessary, which are completely omitted from our understanding of typology. So for me, the idea of experience, the idea of behavior, the idea of typology, ontology, these are my subjects really. Not really structures. And on the other hand, I would say, I do not look at disciplines transgressing architecture as something which will divert me really. If poetry affects me, it will only strengthen me. If literature affects me, it will only strengthen me. It doesn't make me a poet. I do not become a poet. I become a better architect. So similarly, if I know structures well, I become a better architect. But then I think the emphasis on specific kind of technology, a specific kind of technology, and the thinking about technology is something which is set in place by a historical process. And I think it's important for us to interrogate that. I do not think we can kind of keep harping that the architecture settles and stuff like that. It's kind of it's outdated. You will be outdated soon, because there are 30,000 being produced every year, and then with many architects entering the architects and non-architects entering the process of making and thinking space and buildings. I think what is important for us to I keep telling there are two ways of handling situations. One is to build a fort around you, and you keep kind of becoming as thin and thin and thin. The other way is to become a nomad and kind of keep traversing. And historically, the forts have always been conquered, and because it takes very little to kind of to cut the fort, to break the fort. But the nomadic tribes are the ones who've kind of conquered, let it be Mongols or Turks or Mughals or whoever. These are because they've remained agile. So I think it's important for architects and the discipline and the profession to be agile and to kind of change constantly. I mean whether it is drawing, but keep the core, because our core is somebody said talk about space. I would like to really know what is the definition of space that we understand. Do we really have a consensus, and which book is one referring to? Which is this knowledge? Because there are plenty of traditions which define space and form in specific ways, and we had no study in India of space and form. And I think, and just I'll take one more minute to think about what is the profile of the teacher and we've been very careful, and I agree with Rajeev, we've been very careful in getting our faculty, and we all have practicing architects as faculty. We insist that our teachers practice. Now they may be product designers, they may be doing small houses, they may be doing illustrations, they may be artists, but they have a sense of the world. So that is very important for us, that every internal faculty practices. It's very important for us because and whatever the practice they want to define. The second thing is, every faculty has a research project, because I think academia is not a coaching class. We do not kind of train people. That is education. Academia, you limit it to education and then it becomes a coaching class. Academia is much wider. It is about generating new knowledge. It's about thinking about the world and reflecting, providing directions to the world, actually. So I think those ideas of academia has to be, and we do not really have good academia in this country, and we need to kind of fight for the idea of the academia and not educational institutions. Educational institutions are a very small part of the larger academia.
So then in that case, are you trying to imply that the core focus should be finding the right faculty, in terms of like how you mentioned that,
train them, provide space, train them. People don't come born in a certain way. We need to kind of spend time to therefore, have research projects, which is compulsory for faculty to undertake. Rajeev mentioned about reading. Faculty should be faculty. To say 5 things, you need to know 50 things. Yeah, you cannot kind of if you quote something, you need to have read that thing. It's kind of and these are very important. And at the same time, it is necessary that you practice. Whatever the practice means for you, actually.
Thank you, sir. Anuja ma'am, I'm going to quote Prasad sir. He said that to say 5 things, you need to know 50 things. But I mean, I think you'll agree. But in the real estate, or let's talk alone about Mumbai. If you want to practice in Mumbai, if you want to say 5 things as an architect, you probably need to know 500. So a lot of times, what happens is that students often complain about lack of ground reality check. Yeah, ground reality check. So what is the way to actually cope with that, ma'am? Is there a way, or they should just wait for the 5 years of, I mean, obviously, since you've also had a 5 years of education, were you sort of also battling that, अरे पर ये इसमें से मुझे शायद ज़्यादा चीजें use नहीं हुई? Like, I don't remember the last time when I have actually, drawn an underground tank, or maybe or actually devised a particular beam for a building, because we have structural and services consultants for that. It's important for us to have knowledge, but it is not important for us to do the work. So there is this sort of a barrier between the ground realities of the profession and what is obviously there and taught and expected us to know in college. What is your take on that, ma'am?
Okay, in continuation with what Prasad said, I agree that faculty needs to be trained. And faculty, because many a times I found a disconnect that what has been taught to them in the college, because many a times it's not a student's fault, but the kind of a knowledge which they are getting. And for them, that time, the faculty is the one who is sharing that knowledge with them. So it's very important that the faculty needs to be trained with the ground realities.
Right.
And professionals can run some sort of a webinars or some interactive sessions with the faculty, where faculty can start understanding that what happens in the real profession. It's good if they are practicing on their own, because then they can connect student with the actual professional realities. Otherwise, I see a complete disconnect when the student come, because of the faculty are not practicing themselves, but there's a lot of bookish knowledge which has been shared, and especially in case of technical details like specifications or services, you can typically see, or even the NBC or even the bylaws, you will see that students are not oriented towards it. I'm not saying that they are going to have 100% of knowledge in the college days.
Right.
It's not expected, but they should have that sort of understanding that, okay, these are the subjects which are going to be cost subject when I come to the realistic professional practice. So definitely, I agree with Rajeev also that if the professionals can spend some amount of time with these faculties, then I think definitely that adds a value to the upcoming students. So how can you do it? I mean, I am doing myself for past 3 to 4 years, and taken design dissertation as a visiting faculty to 5th year student, and then I can see that how I can add values to the student. And definitely faculties who are surrounding me, they try to discuss a lot of things with me. So if that kind of a cohesive spirit is adopted, I think we can see a better picture. But entire education system needs to have the refresh,
Right.
the new technologies, actually professional project management, construction technologies should become an inherent part of the student education, where they can see the new age coming, and they can think about the future. So that's very important.
Thank you, ma'am. Shirish, sir, I'm actually going
Yes,
to go
yes.
to you because, so this is what I have learned from my father. Okay, he says that when you want to do something, you are first responsible for it than your educational system or the college that you come from. Okay, because I think a good college is not necessarily a good outcome of a good student, and a fairly moderate college is also not an outcome that there's not going to be that equipped a student. Okay, it's all individual. So what do you recommend students to start working in various firms during their summer internships, like summer internships, etc., like maybe second year, third year, fourth year, or do you think it's too soon for them to sort of grasp that high level of knowledge?
See, working simultaneously in our days also, I had started working from my third year in vacations. Even in college also, after 5 o'clock, I used to go to some Ardeshir and firm. They used to have repair works and all, because
Right.
earning money also was necessary for me in those days.
Right.
And there were other students also along with me. They were also working, and working in the office simultaneously teaches you meaning of the subjects which are being taught there.
Correct.
For example, center line is being taught, and when in center line there is a small error, the entire building, there is a full mistake happens in that.
It's a mistake.
So you do work with responsibility, correct?
Right.
So working, as Shetty sir also had said, working is very important. But nowadays, the things are which are happening when I am also teaching, the students are loaded with so much work. There are electives, submission for electives. There are studio works or some sort of other work, that workshop they have to do their work. So much submission keeps on happening. So today I doubt whether they will be able to work somewhere. The only that professional practice, whatever that 100 days work, what that time they do it, at that time they go to the office and they see the environment, because college, it's like a punching bag. We are teaching you boxing by hitting on the punching bag, but when you go out, you are actually have to have a combat with so many other people who are competing with you. So this is very important, that somewhere honorarily or whatever, if you get a chance to go on site, if you get a chance to learn the thing, students should do that first, with salary or without salary. That will update their knowledge and that will give them relevance of what is being taught in the college.
That's a very good insight, actually, for all attendees from the third, fourth, fifth year, all students. I think that's a very important insight. Please grab every opportunity that you feel is aligned to what you're going to learn something in the future in terms of, practicing somewhere. Rajeev sir, we're going to go to a very important segment of our today's conversation, which is architectural thesis. Now, often what happens is that, there's this whole big question of what kind of an approach should be taken. Okay, like, are colleges actually open to a more creative approach, or is there like this thing that no, I need this amount of land and this much amount of built up area, and is there that much of restriction that sort of comes in because you all are sort of preparing them for the final, as preparing them to be architects. So do colleges sort of advocate that, okay, if you want to do something creative, please go ahead?
Yes, I think choosing a topic, it starts there. The architects are people who are service providers in a society where they live, and therefore they have to be abreast with the knowledge of what's going around. So if you think that drugs abuse or drugs handling, rehabilitation of drug peddlers is a problem, then designing an institute for drug rehabilitation could become a project. But then what I always advise and what I always tell students is that don't go by what is it that you can provide as a solution to an existing problem. As an architecture student or as a future architect in practice, try to look for an opportunity where you get to learn to work on diverse projects. If you are from a city of Dhule, we have students coming to us from all over Maharashtra. So if you come from Jalgaon, and if you did a study in your school and college there, you have now come to a level of maturity and understanding that what is it that Jalgaon today does not have and must have. Any institution that you can think of that can be thought as a seed of growth so that Jalgaon develops, because you come from Jalgaon, which needs development. Architects are agents for development, and they should come up with ideas which can bring change in society, causing development in society. So if you think like this, you will think of a design project. So I would not only design a building, I would not design a project, I would think of a project that needs to be designed so that I can cause development in the society, because I would not know anything about Jalgaon. You grew up there, you were born there. So as an architecture student who studied in my college at J.J. College of Architecture, you have become so capable that now you can contribute to the place where you came from to study. So this is one way of basically channelizing the thinking process. Second thing is, what do you think is an idea whose time has come and you think that nobody is paying attention to it, and it is you who is going to make a difference? So what is it that you would like to do by way of which you are actually contributing to the profession of architecture or contributing to the pedagogy so that you have better architecture professionals coming out of schools of architecture? So it could be academically inclined, it could be inclined to the developments in the city, or it could be also related to peri-urban areas or outgrowth of the cities, where cities are trying to expand day by day, and what is it that you think is a problem. So if you think urban design issues are a problem to you, you want to redevelop a space in a city and you want to cause a difference, think about doing a project like that. Okay. Today, I think, we want students to think so wide. There was one student who came to me and saying, sir, today I feel that the number of people traveling from Bombay to Pune on this express highway is so much that maybe after 10 years, there will be nothing between Bombay and Pune. It will become one conurbation. So what is it that we should now do? Should we do something about Khandala and Lonavala today? Should we protect it before it is taken away by the people? I said, very good idea. Think about a project that you think that you need to do. So he took up a project near Karjar and he started thinking of coming up with a design part. This is one thing. The second thing I would like you to understand that whenever we have this design dissertation project discussion, we have a group of faculty which discusses with the students. And we give a choice to the student to select their guides. So they can actually discuss their topic with all the teachers and they can build a comfort level with their guides who basically respond to them and understand their ideas better. So I think it is very important that you fall in love with the subject that you're doing. So then you don't feel that you're working. You're doing it something that you have to do. And you don't have to be reminded to do things. Okay. And sorry.
Please. Go ahead.
And the last thing, I was just coming to the last thing, the thought process, how to lead towards thinking. And third is, like Sukhatme sir said, you have to have it built. So you have to, whenever you are able to communicate this idea in form of a drawing, we have construction details, we have structural stability that has to go with it. So we want our structural engineer teacher also to understand what the student is doing through drawing, because he ultimately wants this idea to stand. He wants this to be seen.
Yeah.
And I feel design dissertation is celebration of design ideas in any architecture college. It should be published in the newspaper in the local zone. All the MLAs and all the elected representatives should be invited to see the presentation. They should see the models. They should see the method architecture students want to come out with, so that cities and citizens have ideas that is coming out of architecture colleges. Citizens have to now realize how architects can make a difference, and they better participate with all architecture colleges through design dissertation.
That's a take that I think only, so I think you can give, because with the experience that you have. Prasad sir, I think there's one other aspect of design. Like, so a lot of people often speak that, architectural thesis, what really should be the focus, what really should be the carrier of the project, etc. But unfortunately, at the end, it becomes extremely presentation driven. Like something, now, is it really gone to a point where something well presented in terms of illustrations is necessarily a good thesis? I've grabbed it from one of the Q&As.
I mean, the question of presentation is not good or bad, but it is more of what is relevant and not relevant. I think one can present ideas in multiple ways and stuff like that. But I want to kind of extend Rajeev's thinking a little bit further. Because we've been thinking about thesis very seriously at school, and we think I think it's a very important component, as Rajeev said. It's a very important component of education. And we kind of prepare students over the years to kind of, in the first year, we train them on how to ask questions, really. How do you formulate questions, and one of the exercises that they do is to write a 200-word question, So that's really the idea. The next year, how do you make a diagram, actually, a third year, how do you read an article, fourth year, how do you do quantitative and qualitative analysis? So I think we train students very slowly in very specific skills of research, and finally, in the 9th semester, University of Mumbai kind of provides a very nice opportunity by kind of running the thesis dissertation projects over two semesters, and we kind of take the opportunity to kind of do two things. We do an architectural thesis, which is basically an architectural argument that you make on space, and then the 10th semester a dissertation project based on that argument. Okay, to kind of continue with Rajeev's example of the drug rehabilitation institution, I would say, in the 9th semester, really, one is looking at we won't look at drug rehabilitation institution as such, but we would really look at what does it mean to kind of think about rehabilitation and and treatment, and probably kind of what is important for us is the architecture of care, and the idea of architecture of care, which has very distinct spatial configurations and spatial logic. It may be a building, it may be a neighborhood, it may be a street, it may be many things, because people living in certain community lives kind of have a different kind of ideas towards drug management and stuff like that. So it's an architecture of care that we are interested in. One of the applications of architecture of care would then yield in the 10th semester dissertation project, which is the final project, which would be then probably an institution for drug rehabilitation and stuff like that. So I think specifically making architectural arguments is something which is very important, that will only add to. I saw a thesis where somebody was arguing that when a bridge is built, people underneath become more stressful, and this is a very important thing, because there is a certain amplification of noise, and noise has involuntary responses from our minds actually, and then that makes us more stressful. This is an architectural thesis. You need to have such insights and such works to be done, because it will only add to the broad idea of architecture, and I think that will only strengthen our profession and as well as the discipline.
Shirish sir,
Yes.
there are a lot of people are asking this question, that is there really a specific way in which you choose a topic or start choosing a topic, or sort of, is there a particular way? Is there a manual really for thesis, or it's the entire world is at your disposal?
See, there are two ways of thinking about it. If there is a problem, there are two ways of solving the problem. The way in which the scientists solve the problem, and way in which designer solves the problem. Scientists, for example, now this corona is there. Now, in that case, entire study of metabolism, entire study of RNA, entire study of how that multiplies, and entire ways and study of that virus will happen, and how many types of coronas are there, and whatever.
Right.
There is another way of thinking, is to finding solution on it. The solution finding, they will first go for vaccine creation, and they will not get stuck up into finding out underlying rules of what is happening. Exactly in this case, people think of so many disciplines which affect the human behavior, or so many things which affect perception, so many things which these are decision-making factors, correct?
Right.
If you want to go under the basic rules of it, and you learn everything in the world, and ultimately how you will call yourself as an architect. So somewhere what architect is doing, if there is a problem, for example, I want to design a window where mosquitoes will not come. So I'm not going to study mosquitoes whole life, how many male, female, dengue, not dengue. I don't waste time in doing that, because mosquito is not my problem. My solving the problem through design of a window. So ultimately, after you don't get swayed away with the research, and mostly this is my observation, that there are softwares nowadays available. If you run all your black book through that software, you will find, because students are not doing any bibliography. Bibliography is must. From where they take, it will automatically come. There is no such research kind of mentality which they have developed in 4 years. So suddenly, how you ask them, you have not taught them Bharatanatyam, how you are asking to teach them to do research? Research is a big word. It's a big word it by itself. We call it doing research. Everybody say, I'm doing kitchen platform, I'm doing research. Research is not, there are questionnaires, there are sampling. That is the reason why vaccines are not becoming, because the way we want to use it on human. The thing is, I'll tell you, solution has to come out of it. For example, if I am going to design a hospital for AIDS, I'm designing hospital for trauma, I'm designing hospital for rural, and I'm designing hospital or building for corona now. So physical distancing, social distancing, how I'm going to do, whether I'm going to have a quarantining facility in that, whether I'm going to have an ambulance in that, these are all the way in which architect is supposed to give solution, and not doing research on behavior of how corona happens and how I start hating my servant and how a servant started hating me. So while doing research, Rajeev, one should not get swayed away, because doing research is just doing the literature survey and typing it and showing the black book. Finding out solution, converting that into spaces, converting that into forms, converting that into human comfortable areas is the main skill, Karan. And
Correct.
that skill, people, very few people have that skill,
So,
converting the ideas.
So, but that's a that's an extremely bold opinion, obviously. But I think obviously a lot of us are going to differ on how important research is and how not. And I'm going to go to Anuja ma'am and then Prasad sir on your take on Anuja ma'am first. What do you expect as the outcome of a thesis? Because see, I think I'm just going to differ with Shirish sir here. If there is no research, if people are not expected to do research, then why have dissertation for 6 months? To just create an approach?
Can I answer?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Research meaning not collecting data.
Yeah.
Research meaning you are contributing to that subject.
Okay.
Is anyone, for example, somebody is taking tourist center at Bikaner. Right. What he is contributing to it? He is just collecting the data, and that he calls this as a research. He talks to 50 people, then he calls this as a research. Research has a clear-cut definition. Let's not say that all these film walas also say doing Mahabharata, I did the research. What research you did? Just reading something and writing down is not a research. There are research scholars, there are methodologies how to do the research.
Correct, sir. But then I think there's also, like you said, that there is a methodology, but that means that you should not go for an iconism-driven thesis project. It is important for you to go on an approach-driven thesis project wherein you have an outcome to that particular project. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm trying to say there has to be a hypothought first. That hypothought, people are doing research in architecture also in IITs and Kharagpur and all those places. There are guides also. They have to have your synopsis, and synopsis has to clear what is your hypothought, what you are. Yes. So that hypothought, and then you say, this is my research methodology. This is the way I'm going to have questionnaire. This is the way I'm going to do the literature survey. And this is the way I'm going to project my hypothought. And there are chances that your hypothought might have been already discussed with 110 people. You are not the first people doing it. So having that ego that I am doing something for the first time is absolutely wrong. Then if you spend your time of 6 months in doing something like this, because you are not being guided properly, ultimately you will not get time to do final design also, because as an architect, you have to come out with some sort of solution, and not a purely research that I come out with some sort of new DC rules or some town planning standards or which trees to be planted by the side of road. Well, it can't be like that. That is what I think, Karan. Yeah, okay. Well, one can differ on this.
Yes. So actually, Anuja ma'am, I'm going to change the question because he just gave me a new question to ask you. He mentioned that just because you're not guided properly. Okay. So now, for example, often students observe that what their vision of their project is not what the vision their mentor has. Okay. So often what happens is that there's a constant battle. I have had so many people coming to me that my thesis guy does not agree to this. Okay. Or my thesis guide is not comfortable with me. Like he or she may not support me in front of the external jury. What does a student really do when his thoughts do not align with the thesis mentor?
Very tricky question. See, that time I feel, I mean, if you ask me if I am a mentor and I am a professional mentor, and that time, as Sukhatme sir has said, that giving a solution which is pretty realistic and which is going to work eventually, and your research and your synopsis is giving you a right kind of direction, and you are you're giving a kind of an implementable solution.
Right.
In case if the design ideas are not matching, I would say that even the mentor should allow a student to have a second opinion, just like how the doctor, you go for the second opinion. I think we are in the professional courses, and we can have that kind of open discussion happening on the open platform. You can debate it out, and after debating, that student can be guided. I mean, I would rather look at it complete
Right.
open mind, and I would say that yes, you have a debate. You can take 2 or 3 opinions, and based upon those opinions, either student realizes that yes, my mentor is right, is showing me a right kind of a direction, or whatever he is giving me an opinion, yes, it is a right kind of a guidance, or probably the mentor will get some different ideas and he might start thinking about it. Because at the design dissertation level or thesis level, still things are more or less at the conceptual level, and there still I would not say that you are completely exposed to the professional level. I should allow you a little bit to dream also.
Right.
So to strike right kind of a balance and allow student to breathe his last few days in the college when he's stepping into the profession. So based upon the subject, this call can be taken, and we should have that kind of an interaction, and not I am a faculty and I am the experienced person. But at the 5th year, yes, I consider all my students as my colleagues. And if we can have that kind of a open education system, I think we can have a right kind of a win-win situation, and it will become very interesting way of getting the education.
I'm going to take a snippet of this part of whatever you said and send it to some faculties, which I think would help the students as well, because they are not attending today, I think. But Shirish, I'll just come to you one
1
second.
minute,
Yeah. Prasad sir, after what Anuja ma'am really said, so finally, as the outcome of the project, you already elaborated a lot on what design is and what space building, etc. is. But as an outcome of the project, how does one student really evaluate the limits and limitations of a project? Like, you can do so much in 1 year, but how should a student really evaluate limitations of a particular project and the reach of what he or she is doing?
I'm going to use the Corona example, actually, and the Corona example is an interesting example. And I'm going to kind of, pose two things, the idea of practice and the idea of projects, right? The practice of an architect is very important. And I think living like an architect means something, and doing projects means something else. If somebody comes to me and does and asks me to do a building for Corona hospital for Corona, then I will do my research, and I think in 5 years of my education and of years of my practice, even if I have not done my a building before, I will be able to do, and one can kind of do it as better as possible. But I think that is the project dimension of it. But I think what is important for us is to live like architects. And I think to live like architects means to ask questions about what does Corona do to all our lives? What does it do to the idea of home, really? Whether when we are constrained in the house, does a house really become a home? Does the street become a part of our home at all, actually? And what happens to all of those things that we cherished as architects? The idea of gathering, of community, of social life, etc., etc., etc. What happens to all our transactions? What happens to the question today is not really whether it is digital teaching, digital learning or no, digital university or no. The question is, how do we deal with the whole autodidactic, the self-learning procedures that are being set right now? The question right now is not really, when to get into our socioeconomic lives. The question really is how to get into the socioeconomic lives, So I think all of these questions as architects is important, and we as architectural practitioners, these are more important questions that should be coming when we live our lives as architects and thinkers of space and thinkers of future and thinkers of tomorrow and thinkers of life. Projects we will be able to do because we are trained to do projects, and we will manage, we will struggle, we will ask our friends, we will kind of go around and we kind of do, and we may do it slightly slowly or slightly fast. and I do not think people do not make mistakes. People make mistakes, but they learn from it. If I get a project to do Corona Hospital, I will do, and I will do the best I know. But it is whether the question really is, what does it mean to really live like an architect? And I think that speculative possibility is very important to practice.
Analyzing that is important. Shirish sir, you wanted to say something, and I would just want you to add this part of the question to your answer. Sir, how practically driven should a thesis project be? A lot of people are asking. We have DC regulations and high-rise points. If I want to do a high-rise building, there are environmental clearances, etc., which I end up focusing on in my professional life. So how many portions of that sort of should reflect in your thesis, in your understanding of your thesis project?
Yeah. Before that, I'll just give you the example, the way in which I did my research.
Right.
This was on industrial landscaping. In 1978, I passed it. Dr. Jordar was my guide. Muni Chakravarti was another guide. There was one professor, Dr. Sen from Chemical Engineering, Department of IIT Kharagpur. He was also my guide. And there was somebody from Indian Institute of Science, one Mr. Deshpande, who was a botanist.
Okay.
These 4 people were my guides. Okay. And I studied a lot of things. In those days, impact assessment, there was a small book available about environmental impact assessment. And that was my MArch thesis. So research I had done freely. In that, what contribution I made was, I had taken a Dombivli industrial estate, and with given environmental stability, given smoke detection, how much pollutants they give, given the height of chimney, I had made a computer program which will draw a pollution contours on the industrial estate.
Right.
Almost once the pollution contours, that was done for the first time. And that is what I consider as a contribution as a research. So now answering your second question is like how, can you repeat the question?
So how important is it to have the practical aspects of DC regulations of a city, or, what the land use is, and, the other aspects of, I'm not even going into climatology and all of that. I'm talking about the real basics of building.
See, first thing is, before you start showering your own philosophies, you have to have respect for codes. You should have respect for bylaws. You should have respect for all those kind of codes which has been DC rules. If you don't have respect for that, then there is no point, because those have been done by town planners. Those have been done by experts in different fields.
Okay.
The National Building Code, there are 16 doctorate people who are doing it, and they are deciding what should be the travel distance from door to the staircase. Now, if you say, I want to do the research on that, why it is 22.6 inches, and I feel like while running, I can run for longer time, why it should not be 45? All these stupid questions there are no place in codes. The code has to be followed. Similarly, structure, codes are followed. Some architects know there is like an inverted beam. They say, I inverted beam le lunga. Inverted beam, how you will take inverted beam? You have to have 2-side inverted beam, then you can do on your floor. Are you going to have inverted beam? Or people say, I'm going to take PT beam. Or PT beam, how you will take? So these are just vocabularies we know, and we try and impress but the people who knows the knowledge of it, they are not getting impressed. So working out number of toilets, working out total number of parking, working out requirement as per DC rule, FSI control, these are all rules, regulations. If they will not fill, if you remember, when you travel to abroad, you have a cabin baggage. And when your cabin baggage is there, there is one empty tray on which you have to put that bag. And if that bag goes into that, then only it is allowed to go into the cabin, right? So if your bylaws, without asking why this rule and why 3 feet and why 33 feet and trying to do some philosophies out of it, follow the rules, follow the codes, and get your plans as per the codes and rules and regulations. And that is the solving the complexity of it. Running away from it means that you are not able to think in complexity.
Sir, but you mentioned the example of baggage. There's a counter of special baggage which are deformed, and other kinds of baggages in an airport as well. So
I don't
do you
want to
think the
elaborate
education
on that.
system
No,
Do you
no.
think the education system is acceptful of hypothetical thesis projects as well?
See that there is nothing like hypothesis. Hypothesis is something utopian, right? Ultimately, it has to come and it has to become a tangible kind of a solution. I understand. For example, there was apple was falling and Newton saw it. His hypothesis was what? Nobody thought of it. His hypothesis was there must be something which is attracting it.
Correct.
Or Archimedes fallen into the water, water came out. His hypothesis, but he proved it, and he proved to the king that how to find out the impurities of gold. Ultimately, he came out with tangible solution on it. He didn't just keep on talking philosophies. Newton came with law of gravitation. Einstein came with law of relativity by which entire space is being now entirely capturing. Pluto with mathematically, he found out there must be a planet there. He mathematically proved it.
Right.
He made everyone, Copernicus, he said that Earth is not flat. It was not his philosophy. He proved it. So proving it is very important, and proving it means for architect, you should have a tangible design for it. If you can't prove it, if you can't design a simple toilet, or if you can't put a lift, or you can't put a staircase and trade risers you do not know, you are not there to give philosophies.
Yeah. So this is my final segment, which is actually going to be a questionnaire which is deducted from all the questions that we have. And if there are any specific questions that you want to answer, you all can either type it out later, or just we'll send you a snippet of that question to you personally. Just in this segment, I mean, just please treat it like a more rapid thing. Not going to be a rapid fire round, but it's going to be more like something which we are expecting very objective answers for. One word or one line.
Climax is always rapid, right?
Yeah, it's well rapid. So I'm going to start with Rajeev sir. Rajeev sir, do you think the jurors that come for the jury for thesis or any architectural design projects should be trained, or should be sort of given a snippet of the projects they are going to review a day or two in advance? Yes or no?
Yes, I think they should be given, because the jurors have been also given how to evaluate a design dissertation projects.
Okay, got
Yeah,
it.
so they should be given. Yes.
Great, thank you so much. Anuja ma'am, is architecture really an underpaid profession? If yes, then do we eventually cope with it in our careers?
Not really.
Not really underpaid, or not really you cope with it?
Not really underpaid. In the current situation right now, I can say it's not really underpaid.
It's not very underpaid. Okay. Prasad sir, if objectively, if you have to answer, do you recommend, if someone wants to do a master's degree, do you recommend a master's in India or in abroad post the graduation?
Doesn't matter.
Does not matter. Okay, great. Shirish sir, is obtaining a speed in design more important, or be creative and take more time more important?
Speed in design is more important.
Okay, thank you. Rajeev sir, there's a question. Is there any way in which colleges can remove their tags and logos, blur boundaries of education, so every student can learn from other faculties of other colleges?
I think it should be encouraged, it should be promoted, and the young student of architecture should be given this freedom to meet all teachers of architecture in all colleges of architecture in India. I think we should learn to learn from each other. You know, the only problem we are having, and I am going through, is that a lot of people lack the ability to recognize ability. You know, we have to learn to coexist. Otherwise, there is no future for us.
Great. Anuja ma'am, so the question for you is, what is that one subject that you would want to add in the curriculum of architecture? There are already a lot of subjects. We'll subtract one later. I'll ask that question to Prasad sir. But what is that one subject that you would want to add in the curriculum of architecture that would help them in the profession more?
I think we should be adding a kind of a personality development or the presentation skills and a little bit of marketing analysis and the project management. I think that should be the blend which will take architects to a different level.
I have noted this. I'll try to do it.
Perfect. That's great. Prasad sir, that question to you. A subject that has been taught, time and again by the Mumbai University, a subject that we think that should be readdressed, that needs the most maximum readdress.
I think all the subjects require interrogation, and I would just kind of make one small point here. We need a course on repair and retrofit. And I think and we do not have it anywhere in the country, in architecture
Right.
or in engineering. We do not
Agreed.
have. We need to spend time on that. And second is ethics. We need a course on ethics.
Yeah, very right, very correct. Yeah.
Agree. Totally.
I have learned something today. Okay, Shirish sir, what according to you is the most important quality of a graduate architect?
He should be able to deliver his product accurate, precision, perfect, and in time. Time is the essence of everything. Can you just allow me to tell one anecdote? I had somebody used to do model for me, and he used to spend a lot of time in doing models and creepers and trees. By the time my building is ready already, his model used to come.
Okay.
So speed is the key of everything now. Yeah.
Sorry, Rajeev sir.
This is the fact.
Absolutely.
Bogi Das, if you remember Bogi Das from
Yeah.
JJ,
Yes.
he used to keep on doing model. He just enjoyed doing model. My building ban gaya, bhaiya.
Okay, Rajeev sir,
Yes.
would you advocate 3D modeling more or a physical model more?
See, if you have the equipment, 3D modeling, of course. But if somebody
Oh no, sir, I
can,
mean software based. I mean software, like a
yeah,
SketchUp or
3D
a Revit
modeling
model.
software. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking about Revit model, right? Not a
Yeah,
physical
like Revit
model.
or SketchUp versus a physical model.
No, I would go for Revit and SketchUp today because it is faster and you can actually work on it while taking design decisions anytime.
Okay. Anuja ma'am, on the scale of 0 to 10, how important is failure as a part of the profession of architecture?
I would rate it 7 or 8. Very important to fail.
Okay, last two questions for Prasad sir and Shirish sir. If Prasad sir, for you as a visiting, as a faculty, you've previously been a visiting faculty, etc. There's often this thing that where students get demotivated. Whether sheets are torn or maybe they are dissed by some faculty, etc. Could you just in one line or two lines please mention something that does not demotivate students who actually want to do architecture to leave a profession because of someone's opinion?
I think tearing sheets and stuff like that is simply bad behavior. Actually, you should not be kind of doing these kind of things. One can be firm and in many different ways. Actually. I think the question is not. I think motivation requires a analytical process to kind of go through. You need a method. You can't just keep giving pep talks. You need to kind of follow a method to kind of motivate students. And I think teachers should learn that. And I think that's very important.
That's absolutely great. And Shirish sir, lastly, this is a very, very, I call it a very gossipy question actually, but so is it really important to have a concept sheet all the time? Can design not be done by guts? Does it necessarily need to have an inspiration or a concept?
See, concept sheets are meaningless to my mind. Your concept sheets are done afterwards, after the design comes out, because this is a perception scientists have said. When you are designing or when any art happens, at that time you are not thinking. Thinking happens before or thinking happens after. So when thinking happens after whatever you have come, most of this happens like big counsel is justifying his client he has not done the murder. So those concept sheets They try and show me the concept sheet, but I say you show me in design how that I have to. If I ask you why this shape has been taken, you show me in concept sheet how it has come. But ultimately, just how that embryo stage has come, dole banle, aankh banla, haath banla, paya banla. Ultimately, I want to see the final baby here. I'm not interested in how in womb it has happened, and it has got no meaning. For example, if it's a human child, it is not going to come out as a dog child, right? So
no, sir, I don't mean that.
There's absolutely no meaning to my mind.
No, so I don't mean that. I don't mean that, okay, when you actually have had inspiration and, have a concept, you should definitely showcase it. There is nothing wrong in going to showcase it.
You have justifying logic. What is the logic behind it? That you do it. For example, how the plane is drafted, right?
Can I say something, sir?
Even I have to say something.
Okay, yes, please.
Me
okay, everyone wants to say something. Yes, okay, Rajeev sir, yes.
I'm so
This is the
gossipy.
best last question I could have thought of.
No, Sukhatme sir, I think design thinking is to start with. Then you come to design implementation. Then you come to design finalization. It's like ideation. How do you generate ideas? Then you convert that ideas into form space. Then you do a building around it, or you do whatever you wish to do around it, and then come to a final product. So I think the design thinking is also very important, and ultimately what you come out with is your final design product. That's all right, but design thinking and design process becomes very important.
Exactly.
How
So
you
I was
arrive
coming to the process. I was
how
coming
you
to
have
the process.
concluded to the right solution. Those steps have no meaning. You have concluded to it. You have hit the bull.
No, sir. If you want
justifying your mistakes, then okay, you do it, right?
Yeah.
No, but sometimes your process was very interesting, and if you want, if you want to narrate that story, and as you rightly said, not to narrate it, that then मैंने उसके लिए story बनाया. No, it was a narration. If you want to express it, you can express it, but it's not something that something is a part of my submittal. But it should happen a very easy way. It should become a very easy part of your process or your presentation. Which has come out as your process.
Judging thesis is not an entertainment activity, right?
No, it is a journey.
Why should entertain you?
No, it is basically describing your journey. It is basically describing your journey to arrive at a destination.
Yeah, and it's not a jabardasti ka journey you have to show.
Waste of stationery.
If it's really relevant, then you should
waste of stationery. Oh my God, that's such a cruel thing to say. Okay, Prasad sir, you wanted to add something, please?
I just want to say that all drawings are conceptual drawings only. There's nothing like because what you're making is basically if you think something which is made for a contractor is a drawing, and something which is not made for to explain something to somebody else is a drawing or something like that. I mean, all drawings are conceptual drawings. So it is a matter of how you want to kind of work with your whole idea of explaining the project. What is your imagination?
Right.
I think concept karo, anything you will do, it will be conceptual because it's an idea. It is not. It's not. If somebody is referring to specific working drawings as a specific way, then I have a difference with it, because that is made for contractors. That's not made for different kinds of people to imagine space.
If there's anyone else who wants to add something to this, because we shall be taking the concluding comments today. So now, okay, Rajeev sir, any final comments? Anything that you would want our viewers to know? Anything for the students?
Yes, see, I would like everybody to know that architecture as a course helps you to change your thinking. It opens your mind. It helps you decide and take directions, which perhaps is towards the development context. This is one thing that architecture as a course does. So doing architecture helps you become a good human being. If not anything else, you become a humanist, because you learn so many subjects while you're doing architecture. Your interaction, your method of communication, your managing of site, your site visit, understanding the development of architecture in history is part of your learning. That's one thing. Second thing is that architecture gives you new diverse dimensions to migrate into many things. The architecture is, of course, mother of all arts, but it helps you understand lot of things better. Music, poetry, dance, drama, music is natural to architects, and they learn to enjoy it so well. And it also affects their design thinking, is what I believe in. So I'm very proud about this fact that I became an architect ultimately. I'm son of a civil engineer, and my father did not like it when I started doing architecture, but I'm very proud about this fact. And very lucky that, you know, I had great teachers who helped me understand about it. And I'm very glad, you know, that if I meet a chemical engineer, if I meet an architect, I can see the difference in Ratan Tata and Mukesh Ambani. So Mukesh Ambani as a chemical engineer is what he is, where he is. But when Ratan Tata is what he is, where he is because he is an architect. And I agree that, you know, as an architect, how do you live your life? And how is it that you think about yourself and stand for anything that you decide and take a position in life and commitment is what I have learned through architecture, if not anything else. And I'm very proud about this fact that I am in business of teaching architecture and helping young students of architecture lead towards architecture profession and thereby make a difference. And that is a great satisfaction. And the greatest success I find is when, you know, students of architecture who graduate, postgraduate, go all around the world, come back and meet me and tell me their success stories. I think there's nothing greater than that.
I agree.
You know, this is the greatest satisfaction. And for a teacher like me, my success is my students' success who have become successful architects. And this is what is great about it. If I think there is anything that anybody else thinks that I am a little different in my thought process, I believe in this aspect of thinking. And I'm very, very happy to be able to be in a position where I'm able to interact with so many architects. And I'm in a position to develop minds and change minds of young people and take them towards architecture profession.
So that's an amazing concluding note. But I think there is this entire barrage of students who want to know what is the future. Are the people who are stuck in the fifth year, are they really going to give their exams? If yes, then when? How is the curriculum planned because of the pandemic? If you can just give a 2-minute snippet on that, please.
See, the government of Maharashtra is in a position of conducting meetings with all the vice chancellors, 13 vice chancellors of non-agriculture universities in Maharashtra. On June 2nd, we are having a video conferencing with the Honorable Chief Minister. And we are in the process of deciding whether the final year exams will take place at all. And if it takes place, it will take place not before middle of July. We also have to think whether if these exams happen, whether they will happen online, where students will be evaluated on an online interview, or it will happen face to face. So I think things will be clearer in another week's time. And therefore, I would not be in a position to say anything on that as of now.
Yes, Prasad, sir, you want to add something?
Just saying that, you know, the world is stuck in the pandemic. Yeah, you know, I mean, there are other problems which are more acute than, you know, final year exams. Yeah, you know, and our exams will happen before October. We all know. Yeah, you know, and we are very comfortable and safe at the moment. I mean, there are other problems to think about.
Yeah, but you know, for us, you know, we cannot start an academic session unless a university gives us a circular to start.
Absolutely,
you know?
Absolutely.
There's something that we have to wait for some academic administrative decision.
So for everyone who's asking this question, I think it's important for you to know that there's a bigger social responsibility than the professional responsibility we all hold today, and patience is extremely key. Anuja ma'am, any concluding notes, please?
I would say that whoever are aspiring architects, they are very much in a very interesting, noble profession. And I must mention that architect is a leader and leader of the project. He is the one who is in the driving seat. So it's very important that you look at it from a 360-degree perspective. And to acquire best of the best knowledge of structure for MEP services, of bylaws and NBC, and how you present, how you gain your knowledge, how you do your research, how you understand your nature, climate, everything. So it's very interesting. It's very vast. So explore and enjoy. You are in a fantastic profession, and there is so much to do in our country. So enjoy your best profession.
I really like it how she's very nicely quoted it in garlands of everything. But it is actually a very much noble profession with a lot of, I think what you, ma'am, will definitely agree with, a lot of hard work that goes into building your name as an architect. Whether it's in the teaching profession or whether it is in the practicing
Practice.
profession or both together. Shirish, sir, finally.
Yeah. My concluding remark would be, in architecture, there should be new specialization should be added. For example, architect thinks I'm going to do designing or I'm going to do interior designing, and then people go for stage designing, people go for product designing and all that. There are subjects which are taught to you as an acoustics. There is a subject which is taught to you as a site supervision. There are so many subjects which are being taught to you. Why architect cannot become a HVAC consultant? Why architect cannot become any other field? For example, not only designing, he has to do so many other things. Like, for example, history of architecture, such a subject, so much stress has been given on in the country. There should be on conservation, make it more applied so that they get their profession out of it. I will not say that just, for example, I am going to do designing. No, why? I should go site supervision. I should do HVAC. I should do hospital specialty. I should try and invent my own ways of recruiting. Now, from today, for example, IIT civil engineer, he goes to the bank. He can take any job. You have to learn mathematics, and all these subjects which require left side of your brain has to be polished properly. That is what I think.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Prasad, sir, any concluding comments? And just one thing I would want you to address in your concluding comment. There's a point which I really like, which says that every student is different and every student has different skills. Someone is very good at design, someone is very good at technical, someone is very good at, for example, making a BOQ or something like that. Do you think the course also should be a little more dynamic and flexible to address various various realms of architecture in one same environment? If yes, how can that be done? And is that a learning for other schools and principals of other schools?
Absolutely. I mean, just to kind of quickly answer that, absolutely. I think not only interests but times are different. Like, students have different times of doing things. Like, if you ask a horse to climb a tree, the horse will never be able to climb a tree. The horse will run fast. So it is up to the faculty to kind of think and teach, and the student to kind of explore. And I think the thesis and the fourth and the fifth year in our school, we make sure that students are able to kind of put a building together by the third year, and the fourth year and the fifth year is they find themselves really, and they kind of really kind of take their thesis very seriously. So to answer your question directly, yes, of course we should do it, and one way of doing it is that you think about a foundation of 3 years where you teach the people general things, and 2 years you sharpen their interests and skills and stuff like that. To kind of address to kind of last comments, I completely agree with Rajeev when he says that the idea is to create a good human being actually, and I think that's the most critical thing to that anybody can think about, academia at least, to kind of create a very good human being. The second thing is to kind of figure out a way in which that human being is able to question everything, including bylaws, I would say, including all laws, because laws may be right and wrong together, bylaws may be right or wrong together, because otherwise we wouldn't have had SRAs and our lullaby compounds and stuff like that, because they are all legally correct, legally correct, and but still we have these buildings because the bylaws were wrong actually. So one has to interrogate everything, and last thing is, as an architect, your primary agenda is to create spaces that dignify life and create joy really. I think that imagination of dignifying life and creating joy is something which is the primary thing for architects to kind of understand and think.
So, but if I think that's a wonderful thought, but and maybe again a controversial question, but since it's the last one, I will ask that to you. Sir, you said that it's about creating spaces and making lives, etc. But is there this thing that you can either be a good human being or a good architect, or is it like, I mean, isn't that together? Isn't that does success and being good human being, can they not go together? Do you feel successful architects are also good human beings?
You define success in multiple ways, right? And you can define success in terms of GDP, GNP, GHP, and all those things.
Yeah, I have to say something.
So yeah, Anuja. Yeah.
What is the definition of success, Karan?
Ma'am, don't do this to me. I'm not supposed to answer.
Let's not use the term success, and whatever terminology of success needs to be redefined. And
success is not just commercial success, right?
Absolutely. And that's where once you start realizing that commercial success is not a success, I think that's where you're a good human being.
Nice. Great, that's great. So I think I want to thank each one of you to be a part of this amazing session today. And it's clearly an honor. And for me, it's like literally like a reunion with each one of you, seeing you all after so long. I don't have words to thank you all. I probably will have something sent to you very soon to your house once everything is normal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karan. Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you all of you.
Thank you.
Nice to you all.
Thank you, all of you.
All of you, stay safe. Take care.
All of you. Thank you, attendees. All the questions not answered can be emailed to us, and we're looking forward to having all of you for the next rounds. Everyone, you all will have to end it from your end, please.
Yeah. All right.
Bye.
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 Bye, Anuja.
Bye.